eyes sharply. If you're still thinking of Tyr, think again.
It's been a hand short of being able to look him in the eye. Chapter 4. Shadows Sleeping. Cold filled the common room of the inn despite the fire blazing on the long stone hearth. Perrin rubbed his hands before the flames, but he could get no warmth from them. There was an odd comfort in the cold, though, as if it were a shield. A shield against what, he could not think. Something murmured in the back of his mind. A dim sound, only vaguely heard, scratching to get in. So, you will give it up then. It is the best thing for you. Come. Sit, and we will talk. Trent turned to look at the speaker. The round tables scattered around the room were empty except for the lone man seated in a corner, in the shadows. The rest of the room seemed in some way hazy, almost an impression rather than a place, especially anything he was not looking at directly. He glanced back at the fire. It burned on a brick hearth now. Somehow, none of it bothered him. But he could not have said why. The man beckoned and Perrin walked closer to his table. A square table. The tables were square. Frowning, he reached out to finger the tabletop, but pulled his hand back. There were no lamps in that corner of the room, and despite the light elsewhere, the man and his table were almost hidden, nearly blended with the dimness. Perrin had a feeling that he knew the man, but it was as vague as what he saw out of the corner of his eye. The fellow was in his middle years, handsome and too well dressed for a country inn, in dark, nearly black velvets with white lace falls at his collar and cuffs. He sat stiffly, sometimes pressing a hand to his chest as if moving hurt him. His dark eyes were fixed on Perrin's face. They appeared like glistening points in the shadows. Give what up? Perrin asked. That, of course. The man nodded to the axe at Perrin's waist. He sounded surprised, as if it were a conversation they had had before, an old argument taken up again. Perrin had not realized the axe was there, had not felt the weight of it pulling at his belt. Ran a hand over the half-moon blade and the thick spike that balanced it. The steel felt solid. More solid than anything else there. Maybe even more solid than he was himself. He kept his hand there to hold on to something real. I have thought of it, he said, but I do not think I can. Not yet. The inn seemed to flicker, and the murmur sounded again in his head. No. The murmur faded. No. The man smiled, a cold smile. You are a blacksmith, boy, and a good one from what I hear. Your hands were made for a hammer, not an axe. Made to make things, not to kill. Go back to that before it is too late. Perrin found himself nodding. Yes, but I'm ta'veren. He had never said that out loud before. He knows it already. He was sure of that, though he could not say why. For an instant the man's smile became a grimace, but then it returned in more strength than before. A cold strength. There are ways to change things, boy. Ways to avoid even fate. Sit, and we will talk of them. The shadows appeared to shift and thicken, to reach out. Perrin took a step back, keeping well in the light. I don't think so. At least have a drink with me. To years past and years to come. Here, You will see things more clearly after. The cup the man pushed across the table had not been there a moment before. It shone bright silver, and dark, blood-red wine filled it to the brim. Theron peered at the man's face. Even to his sharp eyes, the shadows seemed to shroud the other man's features like a warder's cloak. Darkness molded the man like a caress. There was something about the man's eyes, something he thought he could remember if he tried hard enough. The memory returned. "No," he said. He spoke to the soft sound inside his head, but when the man's mouth tightened in anger, a flash of rage suppressed as soon as begun, he decided it would do for the wine as well. "I am not thirsty." He turned and started for the door. The fireplace was rounded river stones. A few long tables lined by benches filled the room. He suddenly wanted to be outside, anywhere away from this man. "You will not have many chances," the man said behind him in a hard voice. "Three threads woven together share one another's doom. When one is cut, all are. Fate can kill you if it does not do worse." And felt a sudden heat against his back, rising then fading just as quickly, as if the doors of a huge smelting furnace had swung open and closed again. Startled, he turned back to the room. It was empty. Only a dream, he thought, shivering from the cold. And with that, everything shifted. He stared into the mirror, part of him not comprehending what he saw, another part accepting. A gilded helmet, worked like a lion's head, sat on his head as if it belonged there. Gold leaf covered his ornately hammered breastplate, and gold work embellished the plate and mail on his arms and legs. Only the axe at his side was playing. A voice, his own, whispered in his mind that he would take it over any other weapon, had carried it 1,000 times in 100 battles. No. He wanted to take it off, throw it away. "I can't." There was a sound in his head, louder than a murmur, almost at the level of understanding. "A man destined for glory." He spun away from the mirror and found himself staring at the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He noticed nothing about the room, cared to see nothing but her. Her eyes were pools of midnight, her skin creamy pale, surely softer, more smooth than her dress of white silk. When she moved toward him, his mouth went dry. He realized that every other woman he had ever seen was clumsy and ill-shaped. He shivered and wondered why he felt cold. "A man should grasp his destiny with both hands," she said, smiling. It was almost enough to warm him, smile. She was tall, less than a hand short of being able to look him in the eyes. Silver combs held hair darker than a raven's wing. A broad belt of silver links banded a waist he could have encircled with his hands. "Yes," he whispered. Inside him, startlement fought with acceptance. He had no use for glory. But when she said it, he wanted nothing else. "I mean," the murmuring sound dug at his skull. "No." It was gone, and for a moment, so was acceptance. Almost. He put a hand to his head, touched the golden helmet, took it off. "I don't think I want this. It is not mine." "Don't want it?" He laughed. "What man with blood in his veins would not want glory? As much glory as if he would sound at the horn of Elir." "I don't," he said, though a piece of him shouted that he lied. The horn of Elir. Horn rang out, and the wild charge began. Death rode at his shoulder, and yet she waited ahead, too. His lover, his destroyer. "No, I am a blacksmith."
Hey, Poison, how you doing?
Such a little thing to want. You must not listen to those who would try to turn you from your destiny. They would demean you,
How's your morning
debase
going?
you, destroy you. Fighting fate can only bring pain. Why choose pain when you can have glory, when your name can be remembered alongside all the heroes of legend. I am no hero. You don't know the half of what you are, of what you can be. Well, share a cup with me, to destiny and glory. There was a shining silver cup in her hand, filled with blood-red wine. Drink. He stared at the cup, frowning.
Oh
There
shit.
was something familiar about it. The growling chewed at his brain. No! He fought away from it, refusing to listen. No! Held out the golden cup to him. Drink. Golden. I thought the cup was... It was... The rest of the thought would not come. But in his confusion, the sound came again, inside, gnawing, demanding to be heard. No, he said. No! He looked at the golden helmet in his hands and threw it aside. I am a blacksmith. The sound within his head fought him, struggling toward being heard. He wrapped his arms around his head to shut it out, and only shut it in. I am a man, he shouted. Darkness enfolded him, but her voice followed, whispering. Night is always there, and dreams come to all men, especially you, my wildling, and I will always be in your dreams. Stillness. He lowered his arms. He was back in his own coat and breeches again, sturdy and well made, if plain. Suitable garb for a blacksmith, or any kind.
Hell yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yet he barely noticed them. Stood on a low-railed bridge of stone, arching from one wide, flat-topped stone spire to another. Spires that rose from depths too far for even his eyes to penetrate. The light would have been dim to any other eyes, and he could not make out from where it came. It just was. Everywhere he looked, left and right, up or down, were more bridges, more spires, and railless ramps. There seemed no end to them.
Don't know what happened to my lighter.
Worse, some of those ramps climbed to spire tops that had to be directly above the ones they had left. Splashing water echoed. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. He shivered with cold. Suddenly, from the
Oh
back
yeah,
of his eye,
I just haven't got around to
and
it.
without thinking, he crouched behind the stone railing. There was danger in being seen. He did not know why, but he knew it was true. He just knew. Cautiously peering over the top of the rail, he saw what he had seen moving. A flash of white flickered on a distant ramp. A woman, he was sure, though he could not quite make her out. A woman in a white dress, hurrying somewhere.
Gotta
On a
roll
bridge
some
slightly
roaches
below
loaded.
and much closer than the ramp would look at. A man suddenly appeared, tall and dark and slender. The silver in his black hair giving him a distinguished look. His dark green coat thickly embroidered with golden leaves. Gold covered his belt and pouch, and gems sparkled on his jacket sheath. Hinges circled his boot tops. Where'd he come? Another man started on the other side, his appearance as sudden as the first man's. Black stripes ran down the puffy sleeves of his red coat, and pale lace hung thick at his collar and cuffs. His boots were so worked with silver that it was hard to see the leather. He was shorter than the man he went to meet, more stocky, with close-cropped hair as white as his lace. Age did not make him frail, though. He strode with the same arrogant strength the other man showed. The two of them approached each other warily, like horse traders who know the other fellow has a spavined mare to sell, Perrin thought, and began to talk. Perrin strained his ears, but he could not hear so much as a murmur above the splashing echoes. Frowns and glares and sharp motions, as if half on the point of striking. They did not trust one another. He thought they might even hate each other. He glanced up, searching for the woman, but she was gone. When he looked back down, another man had joined the first two, and somehow, from somewhere, Perrin knew him with the vagueness of an old memory. A handsome man in his middle years, wearing merely black velvet and white lace. Perrin thought. And something before that. Something a long time ago, it seemed. But the memory would not come. The first two men stood side by side now, made uncomfortable allies by the presence of the newcomer. He shouted at them and shook his fist while they shifted uneasily, refusing to meet his glares. If the two hated each other, they feared him more. His eyes, apparently. What is strange about his eyes? The tall, dark man began to argue back, slowly at first, then with increasing fervor. The white-haired man joined in, and suddenly their temporary alliance broke. All three shouted at once, each at both of the others in turn. Abruptly, the man in dark velvets threw his arms wide as if demanding an end to it. And an expanding ball of fire enveloped them. Hid them. Aaron threw his arms around his head and dropped behind the stone railing, huddling there as wind buffeted him, and tore at his clothes. A wind as hot as fire. A wind that was fire. Even with his eyes shut, he could see it, flame billowing across everything, flame blowing through everything. The fiery gale roared through him, too. He could feel it, burning, tugging, trying to consume him and scatter the ashes. He yelled, trying to hang on to himself, knowing it was not enough. And between one heartbeat and the next, the wind was gone. There was no diminishing. One instant a storm of flame pummeled him, the next utter stillness. The echoes of falling water were the only sound. Slowly, Perrin sat up, examining himself. His clothes were unsinged and full, his exposed skin unburned. Only the memory of heat made him believe it had happened. A memory in the mind alone. His body felt no memory of it. Cautiously, he peeked over the railing. Only a few paces of half-melted footing at either end remained of the bridge where the men had been standing. Of them, there was no sign. A prickling in the hair on the back of his neck made him look up. On a ramp above it and to the right, shaggy gray wolf stood looking at him. No! He scrambled to his feet and ran. This is a dream, a nightmare. I want to wake up. He ran, and his vision blurred. The blurs shifted. A buzzing filled his ears, then faded. And as it went, the shimmering in his eyes steadied. He shivered with the cold and knew this for a dream, certain and sure, from the first moment. He was dimly aware of some shadowy memory of dreams preceding this, but this one he knew. He had been in this place before, on previous nights, and if he understood nothing of it, he still knew it for a dream. And once knowing changed nothing. Columns of polished redstone surrounded the open space where he stood, beneath the domed ceiling 50 paces or more above his head. He and another man as big could not have encircled one of those columns with their arms. The floor was paved with great slabs of pale gray stone, hard, yet worn by countless generations of feet. And centered beneath the dome was the reason why all those feet had come to this chamber. A sword hanging hilt down in the air, apparently without support, seemingly where anyone could reach out and take it. It revolved slowly as if some breath of air caught it. Yet it was not really a sword. It seemed made of glass or perhaps crystal. Blade and hilt and crossguard, catching such light as there was and shattering it into 1,000 glitters and flashes. He walked toward it and put out his hand, as he had done each time before. He clearly remembered doing it. The hilt hung there in front of his face, within easy reach. A foot from the shining sword, its hand splayed out against empty air, as if it had touched stone, as he had known it would. He pushed harder, but he might as well have been shoving against the wall. The sword turned and sparkled, a foot away, as far out of reach as if on the other side of an ocean. Londo. He was not certain whether the whisper came inside his head or out. It seemed to echo around the columns, as soft as the wind, everywhere at once, insistent. Londo, who wields me, wields destiny. Take me at the beginning of the final journey. He took a step back, suddenly frightened. It whispered four. 4 times before his dream, he could remember that even now. 4 nights, one after the other. This was the first time anything had changed in it. Twisted ones come. It was a different whisper from a source he knew, and he jumped as if a murderall had touched him. A wolf stood there among the columns, a mountain wolf, almost waist-high and shaggy white and gray. It stared at him intently with eyes as yellow as his own. The Twisted Ones come. No, Perrin rasped. No, I will not let you in. I will not. He clawed his way awake and sat up in his hut, shaking with fear and cold and anger. I will not, he whispered hoarsely. The Twisted Ones come. The thought was clear in his head, but the thought was not his own. The Twisted Ones come. Right there. Chapter 5. Nightmares Walking. Leaping from his bed, Perrin snatched his axe and ran outside, barefoot and wearing nothing but thin linen, heedless of the cold. The moon bathed the clouds with pale white. More than enough light for his eyes, more than enough to see the shapes slipping through the trees from all sides, shapes almost as big as Loyal, but with faces distorted by muzzles and beaks.
I'm trying to wipe my camera off real quick.
Stealthy forms stalking on hooves or paws as often as booted feet. He opened his mouth to shout warning, and suddenly the door of Moraine's hut burst open and Lan dashed out, sword in hand, and shouting, Trollocs! Wait for your lives, Trollocs! Shouts answered him as men began to tumble from their huts, garbed for sleep, which for most meant not at all, but with swords ready. With a bestial roar, the Trollocs rushed forward to be met with steel and cries of Shienar! And the Dragon Reborn! Lan was fully clothed. Perrin would have bet the warder had not slept, and he flung himself among the Trollocs as if his wool were armor. He decided to dance from one to another, man and sword following like water or wind, and where the warder danced, Trollocs screamed and died. Moraine was out the night as well, dancing her own dance among the Trollocs. Her only apparent weapon was a switch, but where she slashed a Trolloc, a line of flame grew on its flesh. Her free hand threw fiery balls summoned from thin air. The Trollocs howled as flames consumed them, crashing on the ground. An entire tree burst into flame from root to crown, then another and another. Trollocs shrieked at the sudden light, but they did not stop swinging their spiked axes and swords curved like scythes. Abruptly, Perrin saw Leah step hesitantly out of Moraine's cabin, halfway around the bowl from him, and all thought of anything else left him. The Tuathalan woman pressed her back against the log wall, a hand to her throat. The light from the burning trees showed him the pain and horror, the loathing on her face as she watched the carnage. Hide! Perrin shouted at her. Get back inside and hide! Welling roar of fighting and dying swallowed his words. He ran toward her. Hide, Leah! For the love of the light, hide! A Trolloc loomed up over him, a cruelly hooked beak where its mouth and nose should have been. Black mail and spikes covered it from shoulders to knees, and it moved on a hawk's talons as it swung one of those strangely curved swords. It smelled of sweat and dirt and blood. Perrin crouched under the slash, shouting wordlessly as he struck out with his axe. He knew he should have been afraid, but urgency suppressed fear. All that mattered was that he had to reach Leah, had to get her to safety, and the Trolloc was in the way. The Trolloc fell, roaring and kicking. Perrin did not know where he had hit it, or if it were dying or merely hurt. He leaped over it, where it lay thrashing, and ran scrambling up the slope. Burning trees cast lurid shadows across the small valley. A flickering shadow beside Moraine's hut suddenly resolved into a Trolloc, goat-snouted and horned. Gripping a wildly spiked axe with both hands, it seemed on the point of rushing down into the fray when its eyes fell on Leah. No! Perrin shouted. Light, no! Rocks skittered away under his bare feet. He did not feel the bruises. The Trolloc's axe rose. Leah! At the last instant, the Trolloc spun, axe flashing toward Perrin. He threw himself down, yelling as steel scored his back. Desperately, he flung out a hand, caught a goat hoof, and pulled with all his strength. The Trolloc's feet came out from under it, and it fell with a crash. But as it slid down the slope, it seized Perrin in hands big enough to make two of his, pulling him along to roll over and over. The stink of it filled his nostrils, goat stench and sour man sweat. Massive arms snaked around his chest, squeezing the air out. His ribs creaked on the point of breaking. The Trollocs' axe was gone in the fall, but blunt goat teeth sank into Perrin's shoulder, powerful jaws chewing. He groaned as pain jolted down his left arm. His lungs labored for breath, and blackness crept in on the edges of his vision, but dimly he was aware that his other arm was free, that somehow he had held on to his own axe. He held it short on the handle, like a hammer, with the spike foremost. With a roar that took the last of his air, he drove the spike into the Trolloc's temple. Soundlessly it convulsed, limbs flinging wide, hurling him away. By instinct alone, his hand tightened on the axe, ripping it loose as the Trolloc slid further down the slope, still twitching. A moment Perrin lay there, fighting for breath. The gash across his back burned, and he felt the wetness of blood. His shoulder protested as he pushed himself up. Leah! She was still there, huddled in front of the hut, not more than 10 paces upslope, watching him with such a look on her face that he could barely meet her eyes. "Don't pity me," he growled at her. "Don't you—" The Myrddraal's leap from the roof of the hut seemed to take too long, and its dead black cloak hung during the slow fall, as if the half-men were standing on the ground already. Its eyeless gaze was fixed on Perrin. It smelled like death. Cold seeped through Perrin's arms and legs as the Myrddraal stared at him. His chest felt like a lump of ice. "Leah," he whispered. It was all he could do not to run. "Leah, please hide. Please." The half-man started toward him, slowly, confident that fear held him in a snare. It moved like a snake, unlimbering a sword so black only the burning trees made it visible. "Got one leg of the tripod," it said softly, "and all fall down." Its voice sounded like dry, rotted leather crumbling. Suddenly Leah moved, throwing herself forward, attempting to wrap her arms around the Myrddraal's legs. It gave an almost casual backwards swing of its dark sword, never even looking around, and she crumpled. Tears started in the corners of Perrin's eyes. "I should have helped her, saved her. I should have done something." But so long as the Myrddraal stared at him with its eyeless gaze, it was an effort even to think. "We come, brother. We come, young bull." Words inside his mind made his head ring like a struck bell. The reverberation shivered through him. With the words came the wolves, scores of them, flooding into his mind as he was aware of them flooding into the bowl-shaped valley. Mountain wolves almost as tall as a man's waist, all white and gray, coming out of the night at the run, aware of the two-legs' surprise as they darted in to take on the twisted ones. Wolves filled him till he could barely remember being a man. His eyes gathered the light, shining golden yellow, and the half-man stopped its advance as if suddenly uncertain. "Fade," Perrin said roughly, but then a different name came to him from the wolves. Trollocs, the twisted ones, made during the War of the Shadow, from melding men and animals, were bad enough. But the Myrddraal— "Never born," young bull spat. Lip curling back in a snarl, he threw himself at the Myrddraal. It moved like a viper, sinuous and deadly, black sword quick as lightning. But he was Young Bull. That was what the wolves called him. Young Bull, with horns of steel that he wielded with his hands. He was one with the wolves. He was a wolf, and any wolf would die 100 times over to see one of the Neverborn go down. The Fade fell back before him, its darting blade now trying to deflect his slashes. Hamstring and throat, that was how wolves killed. Young Bull suddenly threw himself to one side and dropped to a knee, his axe slicing across the back of the half-man's knee. It screamed, a bone-burrowing sound to raise his hair at any other time, and fell, catching itself with one hand. The half-man, the Neverborn, still held its sword firmly. But before it could set itself, Young Bull's axe struck again. Half severed, the Myrddraal's head flopped over to hang down its back. Yet still leaning there on one hand, the Neverborn slashed wildly with its sword. Neverborn were always long in dying. From the wolves as much as his own eyes, Young Bull received impressions of Trollocs thrashing on the ground, shrieking, untouched by wolf or man. those who would have been linked to this Myrddraal and would die when it did, if no one killed them first. Urged to rush down the slope and join his brothers, join in killing the Twisted Ones, in hunting the remaining Neverborn, was strong. But a buried fragment that was still man remembered. Leah. He dropped his axe and turned her over gently. Blood covered her face, and her eyes stared up at him, glazed with death. An accusing stare, it seemed to him. I tried, he told her. I tried to save you. Her stare did not change. What else could I have done? It would have killed you if I hadn't killed it. Come, young bull. Come kill the Twisted Ones. Wolf rolled over him, enveloped him. Letting Leah back down, Perrin took up his axe, blade gleaming wetly. His eyes shone as he raced down the rocky slope. He was young bull. Trees scattered around the bowl-shaped valley burned like torches. A tall pine flared into flame as young bull joined the battle. The night air flashed actinic blue, like sheet lightning, as Lan engaged another Myrddraal, ancient Aes Sedai made steel, meeting black steel wrought in Thunkan-Dar, in the shadow of Shale Ghul. Loyal wielded a quarterstaff the size of a fence rail, the whirling timber marking it. No Trolloc entered without falling. Men fought desperately in the dancing shadows, but young bull, Perrin, noted in a distant way that too many of the Shienaran two-legs were down. The brothers and sisters fought in small packs of 3 or 4, dodging scythe-like swords and spiked axes, darting in with slashing teeth to sever hamstrings, lunging to bite out throats as their prey fell. There was no honor in the way they fought, no glory, no mercy. They had not come for battle, but to kill. Young bull joined one of the small packs, the blade of his axe serving for teeth. He no longer thought of the greater battle. There was only the Trolloc and the wolves, the brothers, cut off from the rest and brought down. Then there would be another, and another, and another, until none were left. None here, none anywhere. He felt the urge to hurl the axe aside and use his teeth, to run on all fours as his brothers did. Run through the high mountain passes. Run belly deep in powdery snow pursuing deer. Run with the cold wind ruffling his fur. He snarled with his brothers, and Trollocs howled with fear at his yellow-eyed days even more than they did at the other wolves. Abruptly, he realized there were no more Trollocs standing anywhere in the bowl, though he could feel his brothers pursuing others as they fled. A pack of 7 had a different prey, somewhere out there in the darkness. One of the Neverborn ran for its hard-footed forelegs. Its horse, a distant part of him, said, and his brothers followed, noses filled with its scent, its essence of death. Inside his head, he was with them, seeing with their eyes. As they closed in, the Neverborn turned, cursing. Black blade and black-clad Neverborn like part of the night. But night was where his brothers and sisters hunted. Young bull snarled as the first brother died, its death pain lancing him. Yet the others closed in, and more brothers and sisters died. But snapping jaws dragged the Neverborn down. It fought back with its own teeth now, ripping out throats, slashing with fingernails that sliced skin and flesh like the hard claws the two-legs carried. But brothers savaged it even as they died. Finally, a lone sister heaved herself out of the still twitching pile, staggered to one side. Morning Mist, she was called. But as with all their names, it was more than that. Frosty morning with the bite of snows yet to come already in the air, and the mist curling thick across the valley, swirling with the sharp breeze that carried the promise of good hunting. Raising her head, Morning Mist howled to the cloud-hidden moon, mourning her dead. Young bull threw back his head and mourned with her. When he lowered his head, Min was staring at him. "You were all right there?" she asked hesitantly. There was a bruise on her cheek and the sleeve half torn from her coat. She had a cudgel in one hand and a dagger in the other. There was blood and hair on both. They were all staring at him, he saw, all those who were still on their feet. Loyal, leaning wearily on his tall staff. Shienarans, who had been carrying their fallen, down to where Moraine crouched over one of their number, with Lan standing at her side. Even the Aes Sedai was looking his way. The burning trees, like huge torches, cast a wavering light. Dead Trollocs lay everywhere. There were more Shienarans down than standing. The bodies of his brothers were scattered among them. So many. Perrin realized he wanted to howl again. Frantically, he walled himself off from contact with the wolves. Images seemed emotions as he tried to stop them. Finally, though, he could no longer feel their pain or their anger, or the desire to hunt the twisted ones, or to run. He gave himself a shake. The wound on his back burned like fire, and his torn shoulder felt as if it had been hammered on an anvil. His bare feet, scraped and bruised, throbbed with his pain. The smell of blood was everywhere. The smell of Trollocs, death. I'm all right, man. You fought well, blacksmith, Lance said. The warder raised his still bloody sword above his head. Tashar, Manetheren. Tashar, Andor. True blood of Manetheren. True blood of Andor. The Shienarans, still standing, so few, lifted their blades and joined him. Tashar, Manetheren. Tashar, Andor. Loyal nodded. Of Urim, he added. Perrin lowered his eyes in embarrassment. Lan had saved him from the questions he did not want to answer, but had given him an honor he did not. The others did not understand. He wondered what they would say. He muttered, "He is dead. I couldn't. Almost reached her in time." "It wouldn't have made any difference," she said softly. "You know that." She leaned to look at his back and winced. "Moiraine will take care of that for you. She's healing though she can." Perrin nodded. His back felt sticky with drawing blood all the way to his waist, but despite the pain, he hardly noticed it. I almost didn't come back that time. I can't let that happen again. I won't. Never again. When he was with the wolves, it was all so different. He did not have to worry about strangers being afraid of him just because he was big then. There was no one thinking he was slow-witted just because he tried to be careful. Wolves knew each other even if they had never met before, and with them, he was just another wolf. No. His hands tightened on the haft of his axe. No. He gave a start as Masema suddenly spoke up. "It was a sign," the Shienararan said, turning in a circle to address everyone. There was blood on his arms and his chest. He had fought in nothing but his breeches. And he moved with a limp, but the light in his eyes was as fervent as it had ever been. More fervent. "A sign to confirm our faith. Even wolves came to fight for the Dragon Reborn. The last battle, the dragon will summon even the beasts of the forest to fight at our sides. It is a sign for us to go forth. Only dark friends will fail to join us." Two of the Shienarans nodded. "You shut your bloody mouth, Masema," Uno snapped. He seemed untouched, but then Uno had been fighting Trollocs since before Perrin was born. Yet he sagged with weariness. Only the painted eye in his eye patch seemed fresh. "We're flaming go forth when the Lord Dragon bloody well tells us, and not before. You sheep-headed farmers flaming remember that." The one-eyed man looked at the growing row of men being tended by Moiraine. He were able to as much as sit up, even after she was done with them, and shook his head. "At least we'll have plenty of flaming wolf hides to keep the wounded warm." "No!" The Shienarans seemed surprised at the vehemence in Perrin's voice. "They fought for us, and we'll bury them with our dead." Uno frowned and opened his mouth as if to argue, but Perrin fixed him with a steady, yellow-eyed stare. It was the Shienararan who dropped his gaze first and nodded. Perrin cleared his throat, embarrassed all over again, as Uno gave orders for the Shienarans who were fit to gather the dead wolves. She was squinting at him the way she did when she saw things. "Where's Rand?" he asked her. "Out there in the dark," she said, nodding upslope without taking her eyes off him. "He will not talk to anyone. He just sits there, snapping at anyone who comes near him. talk to me, Perrin said. She followed him, protesting all the while that he ought to wait until Moraine had seen to his injuries. What does she see when she looks at me? I don't want to know. And was seated on the ground just beyond the light of the burning trees, with his back against the trunk of a stunted oak. Staring at nothing, he had his arms wrapped around himself, hands under his red coat, as if feeling the cold. He did not appear to notice their approach. Min sat down beside him, but he did not move, even when she laid a hand on his arm. Even here, Perrin smelled blood, and not only his own. And Perrin began, but Rand cut him off. You know what I did during the fight? Still staring into the distance, Rand addressed the knight. Nothing. Nothing useful. At first, when I reached out for the true source, I couldn't touch it, couldn't grasp it. It kept sliding away. Then, when I finally had hold of it, I was going to burn them all, burn all the Trollocs and Fades. And all I could do was set fire to some trees. He shook with silent laughter, then stopped with a pained grimace. saidin filled me, till I thought I'd explode like fireworks. I had to channel it somewhere, get rid of it before it burned me up. And I found myself thinking about pulling the mountain down and burying the Trollocs. I almost tried. That was my fight. Not against the Trollocs, against myself. To keep from burying us all under the mountain. Min gave Perrin a pained look, as if asking for help. We dealt with them, Rand, Perrin said. He shivered, thinking of all the wounded men down below, and the dead. And then that mountain down on top of us. We didn't need you. Rand's head fell back against the tree, and his eyes closed. I felt them coming, he said, nearly whispering. I didn't know what it was, though. It felt like the taint on saidin. saidin is always there, calling to me, singing to me. By the time I knew the difference, Lan was already shouting his warning. If I could only control it, I could have given warning before they were even close. Half the time, when I actually managed to touch saidin, I didn't know what I am doing at all. The flow of it just sweeps me along. I could have given warning, though. Perrin shifted his bruised feet uncomfortably. We had warning enough. You know, he sounded as if he were trying to convince himself. I could have given warning, too, if I'd talked with the wolves. They knew there were Trollocs and Fades in the mountains. They were trying to tell me. But he wondered, if he did not keep the wolves out of his mind, might he not be running with them now? There had been a man, Elias Machira, who also could talk to wolves. Elias ran with the wolves all the time, yet seemed able to remember he was a man. But he had never told Perrin how he did it, and Perrin had not seen him in a long time. Crunch of boots on rock announced 2 people coming, and a swirl of air carried their scents to Perrin. He was careful not to speak their names, though, until Lan and Moraine were close enough for even ordinary eyes to make them out. Porter had a hand under the Aes Sedai's arm, as if trying to support her without letting her know it. Moraine's eyes were haggard, and she carried a small, age-dark ivory carving of a woman in one hand. Perrin knew it for an Angreal, a remnant from the age of legends that allowed an Aes Sedai to safely channel more of the power than she could alone. It was a measure of her tiredness, that she was using it for healing. Min got to her feet to help Moraine, but the Aes Sedai motioned her away. Everyone else is seen to, she told Min. When I am done here, I can rest. She shook off Lan as well. The look of concentration appeared on her face as she traced a cool hand across Perrin's bleeding shoulder, then along the wound on his back. Touch made his skin tingle. This is not too bad, she said. The bruising of your shoulder goes deep, but the gashes are shallow. Brace yourself. This will not hurt, but... He had never found it easy being near someone he knew was channeling the one power, and still less if it actually involved him. Yet there had been 1 or 2 of those times, and he thought he had some idea what the channeling entailed. But those healings had been minor, simply washing away tiredness, when Moraine could not afford to have him weary. They had been nothing like this. The Aes Sedai's eyes suddenly seemed to be seeing inside him, seeing through him. He gasped and almost dropped his axe. He could feel the skin on his back crawling, muscles writhing as they knit back together. His shoulder quivered uncontrollably and everything blurred. Cold seared him to the bone, then deeper still. He had the impression of moving, falling, flying. He could not tell which, but he felt as if he were rushing somewhere, somehow, at great speed forever. After an eternity, the world came into focus again. Lorraine was stepping back, half staggering, until Lan caught her arm. Gaping, Perrin looked down at his shoulder. The gashes and bruises were gone. Not so much as a twinge remained. He twisted carefully, but the pain in his back had vanished as well, and his feet no longer hurt. He did not need to look to know all the bruises and scrapes were gone. His stomach rumbled loudly. "You should eat as soon as you can," Lorraine told him. "A good bit of the strength for that came from you. You need to replace it." Hunger and images of food were already filling Perrin's head. Blood-rare beef and venison and mutton, and with an effort he made himself stop thinking of meat. He would find some of those roots that smelled like turnips. They were roasted. His stomach growled in protest. "There's barely even a scar, blacksmith," Lan said behind him. "Most of the wolves made their own way to the forest," Lorraine said, knuckling her back and stretching. "But I healed those I could find." Perrin gave her a sharp look, and she seemed to be just making conversation. "Perhaps they came for their own reasons, yet we would likely all be dead without them." Perrin shifted uneasily and dropped his eyes. The Aes Sedai reached toward the bruise on Min's cheek, but Min stepped back, saying, "I'm not really hurt, and you're tired. I've had worse falling over my own feet." Rain smiled and let her hand fall. Lan took her up. She swayed in his grip. "Very well. And what of you, Ran? Did you take any hurt? Even a nick from a Murkow's blade can be deadly, and some Trolloc blades are almost as bad." I noticed something for the first time. "Rand, your coat is wet." Rand pulled his right hand from under his coat, a hand covered in blood. "Not a Murkow," he said absently, peering at his hand. "Not even a Trolloc. The wound I took at Palma broke open." Rain hissed and jerked her arm free from Lan, half fell to her knees beside Rand. Pulling back the side of his coat, she studied his wound. Perrin could not see it, for her head was in the way, but the smell of blood was stronger now. Rain's hands moved. Rand grimaced in pain. "The blood of the dragon reborn on the rocks of Shale Ghul will free mankind from the shadow. Isn't that what the prophecies of the dragon say?" "Who told you that?" Lorraine said sharply. "If you could get me to Shale Ghul now," Rand said drowsily. "By Waygate or Portalstone, there could be an end to it. No more dying. No more dreams. No more." "It were as simple as that," Lorraine said grimly. "I would one way or another, but not fall in the Koreathan cycle and be taken at its face. For everything it says straight out, there are 10 that could mean 100 different things. Do not think you know anything at all of what must be, even if someone has told you the whole of the prophecies." She paused as if gathering strength. Her grip tightened on the Angreal, and her free hand slid along Rand's side, as if it were not covered in blood. "Brace yourself." Suddenly Rand's eyes opened wide, and he sat straight up, gasping and staring and shivering. Perrin had thought when she healed him that it went on forever, but in moments she was easing Rand back against the oak. "I have done as much as I can," she said faintly. "As much as I can. You must be careful. It could break open again if—" As her voice trailed off, she fell. Rand caught her, but Lan was there in an instant to scoop her up. As the warder did so, a look passed across his face, as close to tenderness as Perrin had ever expected to see from him. "The warder said. She is cared for everyone else. There's no one to take her fatigue. We'll put her to bed." "There's Rand," Min said slowly, but the warder shook his head. isn't that I do not think you would try, Sheepherder, he said. But you know so little you might as soon kill her as help her. That's right, Rand said bitterly. I'm not to be trusted. Luz Theron Kinslayer killed everyone close to her. Maybe I'll do the same before I am done. Get yourself together, Sheepherder, Lan said harshly. The whole world rides on your shoulders. Remember you're a man, and do what needs to be done. Rand looked up at the water, and surprisingly, all of his bitterness seemed to be gone. We'll fight the best I can, he said. Because there's no one else, and it has to be done. And the duty is mine. I'll fight, but I do not have to like what I've become. He closed his eyes as if going to sleep. We'll fight. Dreams. He stared down at him a moment, then nodded. He raised his head to look across Moraine at Farron and Min. And to then see to some sleep yourselves. We have plans to make. The light alone knows what happens next. Chapter 6. The Hunt Begins. Farron did not expect to sleep, but a stomach stuffed with cold stew, his resolve about the roots had lasted until the smells of supper's leftovers hit his nose, and bone weariness pulled him down on his bed. If he dreamed, he did not remember. He awoke to Lan shaking his shoulders, dawn through the open door, turning the water to a shadow haloed with light. Rand is gone, was all Lan said before he left at a run. But it was more than enough. Farron dragged himself up, yawning, and dressed quickly in the early chill. Outside, only a handful of Shienarans were in sight, using their horses to drag Trolloc bodies into the woods, and most of those moved as if they should be in a sickbed. A body took time to build back the strength that being healed took. Farron's stomach muttered at him, and his nose tested the breeze in the hope that someone had already started cooking. He was ready to eat those turnip-like roots raw, if need be. There were only the lingering stench of slain Myrddraal, the smells of dead Trollocs and men, alive and dead, of horses and the trees, and dead wolves. Moraine's hut, high on the other side of the bowl, seemed a center of activity. Min hurried inside, and moments later Mosima came out, then Una. At a trot, the one-eyed man vanished into the trees toward the sheer rock wall beyond the hut, while the other Shienaran limped down the slope. Farron started toward the hut. As he splashed across the shallow stream, he met Mosima. The Shienaran's face was haggard, the scar on his cheek prominent, and his eyes even more sunken than usual. In the middle of the stream, he raised his head suddenly and caught Farron's coat sleeve. "You're from his village," Mosima said hoarsely. "You must know. Why did the Lord Dragon abandon us? What sin did we commit?" "Sin? What are you talking about? Wherever Rand went, there was nothing you did or didn't do." Mosima did not appear satisfied. He kept his grip on Farron's sleeve, peering into his face as if there were answers there. Icy water began to seep into Farron's left boot. "Mosima," he said carefully, "whatever the Lord Dragon did, it was according to his plan. The Lord Dragon would not abandon us." "Would he? If I were in his place, would I?" Mosima nodded slowly. Yes, I see that now. He has gone out alone to spread the word of his coming. We must spread the word too. Yes." He limped down across the stream, muttering to himself. Squelching at every other step, Farron climbed to Moraine's hut and knocked. There was no answer. He hesitated a moment, then went in. The outer room where Lan slept was as stark and simple as Farron's own hut, with a rough bed built against one wall, a few pegs for hanging possessions, and a single shelf. Not much light entered through the open door. The only other illumination came from crude lamps on the shelf, slivers of oily fatwood wedged into cracks and pieces of rock. Gave off thin streamers of smoke that made a layer of haze under the roof. Farron's nose wrinkled at the smell. The low roof was only a little higher than his head. Loyal's head actually brushed it, even seated as he was on one end of Lan's bed, with his knees drawn up to make himself small. The Ogier's tufted ears twitched uneasily. Min sat cross-legged on the dirt floor, beside the door that led to Moraine's room, while the Aes Sedai paced back and forth in thought. Dark thoughts they must have been. 3 paces each way was all she had, but she made vigorous use of the space, the calm on her face belied by the quickness of her step. I think Masima is going crazy, Perrin said. Min sniffed. With him, how can you tell? Moraine rounded on him, a tightness to her mouth. Her voice was soft, too soft. Is Masima the most important thing in your mind this morning, Perrin Aybara? No. I'd like to know when Rand left and why. Did anyone see him go? Does anyone know where he went? He made himself meet her look with one just as level and firm. It was not easy. He loomed over her, but she was Aes Sedai. This of your making, Moraine? Did you rein him in until he was so impatient he'd go anywhere, do anything, just to stop sitting still? Oil's ears went stiff. He motioned a surreptitious warning with one thick-fingered hand. Moraine studied Perrin with her head tilted to one side, and it was all he could do not to drop his eyes. This is none of my doing, she said. He left sometime during the night. When and how and why, I yet hope to learn. Loyal's shoulders heaved in a quiet sigh of relief. Quiet for an Ogier, it sounded like steam rushing out from quenching red-hot iron. Never angry, he said in a whisper obviously meant just for himself, but audible to everyone. If you embrace the sun under anger and Aes Sedai. Min reached up enough to hand Perrin a folded piece of paper. Phil went to see him after we got him to bed last night. Rand asked to borrow pen and paper and ink. The Ogier's ears jerked, and he frowned worriedly until his long eyebrows hung down on his cheeks. I did not know what he was frowning. I didn't. We know that, Min said. No one is accusing you of anything. Moraine frowned at the paper, but she did not try to stop Perrin from reading. It was in Rand's hand. What I do because there is no other way. He is hunting me again, and this time one of us has to die, I think. There is no need for those around me to die also. Too many have died for me already. I do not want to die either, and will not if I can manage it. There are lies in dreams, and death. But dreams hold truth, too. Was all, with no signature. There was no need for Perrin to wonder who Rand meant by he. For Rand, for all of them, there could be only one. For all of them. Left that tucked under the door there, Min said in a tight voice. He took some old clothes the Shienarans had hanging out to dry, and his flute and a horse. Nothing else but a little food as far as we can tell. None of the guards saw him go, and last night they would have seen a mouse creeping. And would it have done any good if they had? Moraine said calmly. Would any of them have stopped the Lord Dragon, or even challenged him? Some of them, Masima for one, would slit their own throats if the Lord Dragon told them to. It was Perrin's turn to study her. Do you expect anything else? They swore to follow him. Right, Moraine. He'd never have named himself Dragon if not for you. What did you expect of him? She did not speak, and he went on more quietly. You believe, Moraine, that he's really the Dragon Reborn? Or do you just think he's someone you can use before the one power kills him or drives him mad? Go easy, Loyal said. Not so angry. I'll go easy when she answers me. Well, Moraine? Is what he is, she said sharply. You said the pattern would force him to the right path eventually. Is that what this is? Or is he just trying to get away from you? For a moment, he thought he had gone too far. Her dark eyes sparkled with anger, but he refused to back down. Well, Hank took a deep breath. This may well be what the pattern has chosen. Yet I did not mean for him to go off alone. For all his power, he is as defenseless as a babe in many ways, and is ignorant of the world. He channels, but he has no control over whether or not the one power comes when he reaches for it, and almost as little over what he does with it if it does come. The power itself will kill him before he has a chance to go mad if he does not learn that control. There is so much he must learn yet. He wants to run before he has learned to walk. You split hairs and lay false trails, Moraine, Perrin snorted. If he is what you say he is, did it never occur to you that he might know what he has to do better than you? He is what he is, she repeated firmly. But I must keep him alive if he is to do anything. He will fulfill no prophecies dead, and even if he manages to avoid Dark Friends and Shadow Spawn, there are 1,000 other hands ready to slay him. What it will take is a hint of 100th part of what he is. Yet if that were all he might face, I would not worry half so much as I do. There are the Forsaken to be accounted for. Perrin gave a start. From the corner, Loyal moaned. The Dark One and all the Forsaken are bound in Sheol, Perrin began by rote, but she gave him no time to finish. The seals are weakening, Perrin. Some are broken, though the world does not know that. Must not know that. The Father of Lies is not free, yet. But as the seals weaken, more and more, which of the Forsaken may be loosed already? Lanfear, Samael, Asmodean, or Belial, or Rapine? Is Samael himself, the betrayer of hope? There were 13 altogether, Perrin, and bound in the ceiling, not in the prison that holds the Dark One. 13 of the most powerful Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends. The weakest of them stronger than the 10 strongest Aes Sedai living today. The most ignorant with all the knowledge of the Age of Legends. And every man and woman of them gave up the light and dedicated their souls to the Shadow. What if they are free and out there waiting for him? I will not let them have him. And shivered, partly from the icy irony in her last words and partly from the thought of the Forsaken. He did not want to think of even one of the Forsaken loose in the world. His mother had frightened him with those names when he was little. Samael comes for boys who do not tell their mothers the truth. Lanfear waits in the night for boys who do not go to bed when they are supposed to. Being older did not help. Not when he knew now they were all real. Not when Moraine said they might be free. In Sheol, he whispered, and wished he still believed it. Troubled, he studied Rand's letter again. Dreams. He was talking about dreams yesterday, too. Moraine stepped closer and peered up into his face. Dream? Tenant Uno came in, but she waved them to silence. The small room was more than crowded now, with 5 people in it besides the Ogier. What dreams have you had the last few days, Perrin? She ignored his protest that there was nothing wrong with his dreams. Tell me, she insisted. What dream have you had that was not ordinary? Tell me. Her gaze seized him like smithy tongs, willing him to speak. He looked at the others. They were all watching him fixedly, even Mitt. Then hesitantly told of the one dream that seemed unusual to him. The dream that came every night. The dream of the sword he could not touch. He did not mention the wolf that had appeared in the last. Gondor. Matt breathed when he was done. Rock-hard face or no, he looked stunned. Moraine said. We must be absolutely certain. Speak to the others. As Lan hurried out, she turned to Una. And what of your dreams? Did you dream of a sword too? Shinaran shifted his feet. The red eye painted on his patch stared straight at Moraine, but his real eye blinked and wavered. I dream about about swords all the time, Moraine said he said stiffly. I suppose I've dreamed about his sword the last few nights. I don't remember my dreams the way Lord Perrin here does. Moraine said. Loyal? My dreams are always the same, Moraine said. The groves and the great trees and the steading. We Ogier always dream of the steading when we are away from them. The Aes Sedai turned back to Perrin. It was just a dream, he said. Nothing but a dream. I doubt it, she said. You described the hall called the Heart of the Stone. in the fortress called the Stone of Tyr, as if you had stood in it. And the shining sword is Kalandor, the sword that is not a sword, the sword that cannot be touched. Phil sat up straight, bumping his head on the roof. He did not seem to notice.
The prophecies of the dragon say the Stone of Tyr will never fall till Kalandor is wielded by the dragon's hand. The fall of the Stone of Tyr will be one of the greatest signs of the dragon's rebirth. If Rand holds Kalandor, the whole world must acknowledge him as the dragon.
Perhaps. Word floated from the Aes Sedai's lips like a shard of ice on still water. Perhaps, Beren said. Perhaps. I thought that was the final sign, the last thing to fulfill your prophecies. Neither the first nor the last, Beren said. Kalandor will be but one fulfillment of the Periathon cycle, as his birth on the slopes of Dragonmount was the first. He has yet to break the nations or shatter the world. Even scholars who have studied the prophecies for their entire lives do not know how to interpret them all. What does it mean that he shall slay his people with the sword of peace and destroy them with belief? What does it mean that he shall bind the 9 moons to serve him? Yet these are given equal weight with Kalandor in the cycle. There are others. What wounds of madness and cutting of hope has he healed? What chains has he broken? And who put into chains? And some are so obscure that he may already have fulfilled them, though I am not aware of it. But no, Kalandor is far from the end of it. And shrugged uneasily. He knew only bits and pieces of the prophecies. He had liked hearing them even less since Rand had let Moraine put that banner in his hands. No, it had been before that even. Since a journey by Portalstone had convinced him his life was bound to Rand's. Moraine was continuing. If you think he is simply to put out his hand, loyal son of Arad, son of Havan, you are a fool, as is he if he thinks it. Even if he lives to reach Tyr, he may never attain the stone. Tyrants have no love for the One Power, unless for any man claiming to be the dragon. Channeling is outlawed, and Aes Sedai are tolerated at best, so long as they do not channel. Telling the prophecies of the dragon, or even possessing a copy of them, is enough to put you in prison in Tyr. And no one enters the Stone of Tyr without permission of the High Lords. None but the High Lords themselves enter the heart of the stone. He is not ready for this. Not ready. Beren grunted softly. The stone would never fall till the dragon reborn held Kalandor. How in the light is he supposed to reach it? Inside a bloody fortress, before the fortress falls. It is madness. Why are we just sitting here? Min burst out. If Rand is going to Tyr, why aren't we following him? He could be killed or... Why are we sitting here? Moraine put a hand on Min's head. Because I must be sure, she said gently. It is not comfortable being chosen by the Wheel to be great or to be near greatness. The chosen of the Wheel can only take what comes. I am tired of taking what comes. Min scrubbed a hand across her eyes. Beren thought he saw tears. Rand could be dying while we wait. Moraine smoothed Min's hair. There was a look almost of pity on the Aes Sedai's face.
Hey, Vicky Session, how you doing?
Opposite Loyal.
Hope you're doing well tonight. Hope everyone's doing well tonight.
Loyal smelled of books and trees as well as worry. It felt like a trap with the walls around them and all so close. The burning slivers stank. Can my dream tell where Rand is going? He asked. It was my dream. Those who can channel the One Power, Moraine said quietly. Those who are particularly strong in spirit can sometimes force their dreams on others. She did not stop her soothing of Min, especially on those who are acceptable. Do not believe Rand did it on purpose, but the dreams of those touching the true source can be powerful. For one as strong as he, they could possibly seize an entire village, or perhaps even a city. He knows little of what he does, even less of how to control it. Then why didn't you have it too? He demanded. Or Lan? Uno stared straight ahead, looking as if he would rather be anywhere else. Loyal's ears wilted. Perrin was too tired and too hungry to care whether he showed proper respect for an Aes Sedai. And too hungry as well, he realized. Why? Moraine answered calmly. Aes Sedai learn to shield their dreams. I do it without thinking when I sleep. Warders are given something much the same in the bonding. The Gaidin could not do what they must. Shadow could steal into their dreams. We are all vulnerable when we sleep, and the shadow is strong in the night. It's always something new from you, Perrin growled. Can't you tell us what to expect once in a while, instead of explaining after it happens? Uno looked as though he was trying to think of a reason to leave. Moraine gave Perrin a flat look. You want me to share a lifetime of knowledge with you in a single afternoon? Or even a single year? I will tell you this. Be wary of dreams, Perrin Ibarra. Be very wary of dreams. Pulled his eyes away from hers. I am, he murmured. I am. To that, silence, and no one seemed to want to break it. Min sat staring at her crossed ankles, but apparently taking some comfort from Moraine's presence. Uno stood against the wall, not looking at anyone. Loyal forgot himself enough to pull a book from his pocket and try to read in a thin line. The wait was long. It's not the shadow. Wolves. I will not let them in. I won't. Ken returned, and Moraine straightened eagerly. The water answered the question in her eyes. Some remember dreaming of swords the last 4 nights running. Some remember a place with great columns, and 5 say the sword was crystal or glass. Massima says he saw Rand holding it last night. That one would, Moraine said. She rubbed her hands together briskly, using a bundle of energy. Though I still wish I knew how he left here unseen. If he has rediscovered some talent from the Age of Legends. Land looked at Uno. The one-eyed man shrugged in dismay. I bloody forgot with all this flaming talk about blood. He cleared his throat, shooting a glance at Moraine. She looked back expectantly, and he went on. I mean, that is, I followed the Lord Dragon's tracks. There's another way into that closed valley now. The rock on the far wall. It's a hard climb, but you can get a horse up it. I found more tracks at the top, and there's an easy way from there around the mountain. Kind of a long breath. Good, Moraine said. At least he has not rediscovered how to fly or make himself invisible or something else out of legend. We must follow him without delay. Uno, I will give you enough gold to take you and the others as far as Jahanna. In the name of someone there who will see that you get more. The Gil'Aldanan are wary of strangers, but if you keep to yourselves, they should not trouble you. Wait there until I send word. But we will go with you, he protested. We have all sworn to follow the Dragon Reborn. I do not see how the few of us can take a fortress that has never fallen. But with the Lord Dragon's aid, we will do what must be done. So we are the people of the Dragon now, Perrin laughed breathlessly. The Stone of Tyr will never fall till the people of the Dragon come. Have you given us a new name, Moraine? Watch your tongue, blacksmith, Land growled, all ice and stone. Moraine gave them both sharp looks, and they fell silent. Forgive me, Uno, she said, but we must travel quickly if we are to have a hope of overtaking him. You are the only Shienaran fit enough for a hard ride. We cannot afford the days the others will need to regain full strength. I will send for you when I can. Uno grimaced, but he bowed in acquiescence. At her dismissal, he squared his shoulders and left to tell the others. I am going anyway, whatever you say, Min put in firmly. You are going to Tar Valon, Moraine told her. I am no such thing. The Aes Sedai went on smoothly, as if the other woman had not spoken. The Amerlin seat must be told what has happened. I cannot count on finding one I can trust who has messenger pigeons. Or that the Amerlin will see any message I send by pigeon. It is a long journey and hard. I would not send you alone if there were anyone to send with you. But I will see you have money and letters to those who might help you on your way. You must ride quickly, though. And your horse tires, buy another, or steal one if you must. But ride quickly. Uno, take your message. He's fit. You said so. I'm going after Rand. Uno has his duties, men. And do you think a man could simply walk up to the gates of the White Tower and demand an audience with the Amerlin seat? Even a king would be made to wait days if he arrived unannounced. And I fear any of the Shannarans would be left kicking their heels for weeks, if not forever. Not to mention that something so unusual will be known to everyone in Tar Valon before the first sunset. Few women seek audiences with the Amerlin herself, but it does happen. And it should occasion no great comment. No one must learn even as much as that the Amerlin has received a message from me. Her life and ours would depend on it. You are the one who must go. Min sat there opening and closing her mouth, obviously searching for another argument, but Moraine had already gone on. Lan, I very much fear we will find more evidence of his passing than I would like. But I will rely on your tracking. The warder nodded. Baron, loyal, will you come with me after Rand? From her place against the wall, Min gave an indignant squawk, but the Aes Sedai ignored it.
I will come,
Loyal said quickly.
Rand is my friend, and I will admit it. I would not miss anything. For my book, you see.
Baron was slower to answer. Rand was his friend, whatever he had become in the forging. And there was that near certainty of their futures being linked, though he would have avoided that part of it if he could. It has to be done, doesn't it? He said finally. I will come. Good. Moraine rubbed her hands together again, with the air of someone settling to work. You must all ready yourselves at once. Rand has hours on us. I mean to be well along his trail before midday. Slender as she was, the force of her presence herded all of them but Lan toward the door, Loyal walking stooped over until he was through the doorway. Baron thought of a good wife herding geese. Once outside, Min hung back for a moment to address Lan with a too-sweet smile. And is there any message you want carried? To Nynaeve, perhaps? The warder blinked as if caught off guard, like a horse on 3 legs. Does everyone know? He regained his balance almost immediately. If there is anything else she needs to hear from me, I will tell her myself. He closed the door nearly in her face. There, Min muttered at the door. Too blind to see what a stone could see, and too stubborn to be trusted to think for themselves. Baron inhaled deeply. Faint smells of death still hung in the valley air, but it was better than the closeness inside. Some better.
The air,
Loyal sighed.
the smoke was beginning to bother me a little.
They started down the slope together. Beside the stream below, the Shannarans, who could stand, were gathered around Uno. From his gestures, the one-eyed man was making up for lost time with his cursing. How did you two become privileged? Min demanded abruptly. She asked you. She didn't do me the courtesy of asking. Loyal shook his head.
I think she asked because she knew what we would answer. Moraine seems able to read Perrin and me. She knows what we'll do. But you are a closed book to her.
Min appeared only a little mollified. She looked up at them, Perrin head and shoulders taller on one side, and Loyal towering even higher on the other. Much good it does me. I'm still going where she wants as easily as you two little lambs. You were doing well for a while, Perrin, standing up to her like she'd sold you a coat and the seams were popping open. I did stand up to her, didn't I? Perrin said wonderingly. He had not really realized he had done that. It was not so bad as I'd have thought it would be.
You were lucky, Loyal rumbled. Ranger and Aes Sedai used to put your head in a hornet's nest.
Loyal, Min said. I need to speak to Perrin. Alone. Would you mind?
Oh, of course not.
He lengthened his stride to its normal span and quickly moved ahead of them, pulling his pipe and tobacco pouch from a coat pocket. Perrin eyed her warily. She was biting her lip as if considering what to say. Do you ever see things about him? He asked, nodding after the Ogier. She shook her head. I think it only works with humans. But I've seen things around you that you ought to know about. I've told you, don't be more thick-headed than you have to be, Perrin. Back there, right after you said you'd go, they were not there before. They must have to do with this journey, or at least with you deciding to go. For a moment, he said reluctantly, what did you see? An Aielman in a cage, she said promptly. A Duathlon with a sword. A falcon and a hawk perching on your shoulders. Both female, I think. And all the rest, of course. What is always there. Darkness swirling round you, and none of that, he said quickly. When he was sure she had stopped, he scratched his head thinking. None of it made any sense to him. Do you have any idea what it all means? The new things, I mean. No, but they're important. The things I see always are. Turning points in people's lives, or what's faded. It's always important. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at him. One more thing, she said slowly. You meet a woman, the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Run. Perrin blinked. You saw a beautiful woman? Why should I run from a beautiful woman? Can't you just take advice? She said irritably. She kicked at a stone and watched it roll down the slope. Perrin did not like jumping to conclusions. It was one of the reasons some people thought him slow-witted. But he totaled up a number of things Min had said in the last few days and came to a startling conclusion. He stopped dead, hunting for words. Min, you know I like you. I like you, but, you sort of remind me of my sisters. I mean, you... The flow stumbled to a halt as she raised her head to look at him, eyebrows arched. She wore a small smile. My Perrin, you must know that I love you. She stood there, watching his mouth work, then spoke slowly and carefully. Like a brother, you great wooden-headed lummox. The arrogance of men never ceases to amaze me. You all think everything has to do with you, and every woman has to desire you. Perrin felt his face growing hot. I didn't. He cleared his throat. What did you see about a woman? Just take my advice, she said, and started down toward the stream again, walking fast. If you forget all the rest, she called over her shoulder, heed that. Frowned after her. For once his thoughts seemed to arrange themselves quickly, then caught up in two strides. It's Rand, isn't it? She made a sound in her throat and gave him a sidelong look. She did not slow down. He wasn't so boneheaded after all, she muttered. After a moment, she added, as if to herself, I'm bound to him as surely as a stave is bound to a barrel. But I can't see if he'll ever love me in return. And I'm not the only one. Does Egwene know? He asked. Brandon and Egwene had been all but promised since childhood. Everything but kneeling in front of the women's circle of the village to speak the betrothal. He was not sure how far they had drifted from that, if at all. She knows, Min said curtly. Much good it does either of us. About Rand, does he know? Oh, of course, she said bitterly. I told him, didn't I? Rand, I did a viewing of you, and it seems I have to fall in love with you. I have to share you, too. And I don't much like that, but there it is. You're a wooden-headed wonder after all, Perrin Aybara. She dashed a hand across her eyes angrily. If I could be with him, I know I could help. Somehow. But if he dies, I don't know if I can stand it. Perrin shrugged uncomfortably. Listen, Min. I'll do what I can to help him, however much that is. I promise you that. It really is best for you to go to Tarvalin. We'll be safe there. Safe? She tasted the word as if wondering what it meant. You think Tarvalin is safe? There's no safety in Tarvalin. There's no safety anywhere. She sniffed loudly, and in silence they went to join those preparations to leave. Chapter 7. Way out of the mountains. Way down out of the mountains was hard. The lower they went, the less Perrin needed his fur-lined cloak. Hour by hour, they rode out of the tailings of winter and into the first days of spring. The last remnants of snow vanished, and grasses and wildflowers, white maiden's hope, began to cover the high meadows they crossed. Trees appeared more often, with more leaves, and grass larks and robins sang in the branches. And there were wolves. Never in sight, not even Lan mentioned seeing one. But Beren knew. He kept his mind firmly closed to them, yet now and again a feather-like tickle at the back of his mind reminded him they were there. Lan spent most of his time scouting their path on his black warhorse Mondar. His tracks, as the rest of them followed the signs the water left for them. An arrow of stones laid on the ground, one lightly scratched in the rock wall of a forking pass. Turn this way, cross that saddle pass, take this switchback, this deer trail, this way through the trees and down along a narrow stream, even though there's nothing to indicate anyone has ever gone that way before. Nothing but Lan's signs. A tuft of grass or weeds tied one way to say bear left, another for bear right. A bent branch. A pile of pebbles for a rough climb ahead. 2 leaves caught on a thorn for a steep descent. The warder had 100 signs, it seemed to Perrin, and Moraine knew them all. Lan rarely came back except when they made camp to confer with Moraine quietly, away from the fire. When the sun rose, most often he was hours gone already. Moraine was always first into the saddle after him, while the eastern sky was just turning pink. The Aes Sedai would not have climbed down from Aldeep or White Mare until full dark or later, except that Lan refused to track further once the light began to fail. "We'll go even slower if a horse breaks a leg," the warder would tell Moraine when she complained. Her reply was always very much the same. "If you can't move any faster than this, perhaps I should send you off to Myrella before you get any older." "Well, perhaps that can wait. But you must move us faster." She half sounded as if the threat were irritated truth, half as if she were making a joke. There was something of a threat in it, or maybe a warning, Perrin was sure, from the way Lan's mouth tightened, even when she smiled afterwards and reached up to pat his shoulder soothingly. "Who is Myrella?" Perrin asked suspiciously the first time it happened. Loyal shook his head, murmuring something about unpleasant things happening to those who pried into Aes Sedai affairs. The Ogier's hairy fetlocked horse was as tall and heavy as a Duran stallion, but with Loyal's long legs dangling to either side, the animal looked undersized, like a large pony. Moraine gave an amused, secretive smile. "Just a green sister. Someone to whom Lan must one day deliver a package for safekeeping." "No day soon," Lan said, and surprisingly, there was open anger in his voice. "Never, if I can help it. You will outlive me long, Moraine Aes Sedai." She has too many secrets, Perrin thought, but asked no more about a subject that could crack the warder's iron self-control. The Aes Sedai had a blanket-wrapped bundle tied behind her saddle, the dragon banner. Perrin was uneasy about having it with them, but Moraine had neither asked his opinion nor listened when he offered it. Not that anyone was likely to recognize it if he saw it, yet he hoped she was as good at keeping secrets from other people as she was at keeping them from him. The beginning, at least, it was a boring journey. One cloud-capped mountain was very much like another, one pass little different from the next. Supper was usually rabbit, dropped by stones from Perrin's sling. He did not have so many arrows as to risk shooting at rabbits in that rocky country. Breakfast was cold rabbit, more often than not, and the midday meal the same, eaten in the saddle. Sometimes when they camped near a stream, and there was still light enough to see, he and Loyal caught mountain trout, lying on their bellies, hands elbow deep in the cold water, tickling the green-backed fish out from under the rock ledges where they hid. Loyal's fingers, big as they were even more deft at it than Perrin's. Once, 3 days after setting out, Moraine joined them, stretching herself out on the streamside and undoing rows of pearl buttons to roll up her sleeves as she asked how the thing was done. Perrin exchanged surprised looks with Loyal. The Ogier shrugged. "It is not that hard, really," Perrin told her. "Just bring your hand up from behind the fish and underneath, as if you're trying to tickle its belly. Then you pull it out. It takes practice, though. You might not catch anything the first few times you try."
"I tried for days before I ever caught anything,"
Loyal added. He was already easing his huge hands into the water, careful to keep his shadow from scaring the fish. Difficult as that, Lorraine murmured. Her hands slipped into the water, and a moment later came out with a splash, holding a fat trout that thrashed the surface. She laughed with delight as she tossed it up onto the bank. Perrin blinked at the big fish flopping in the fading sunlight. It must have weighed at least 5 pounds. You were very lucky, he said. Trout that size don't often shelter under a ledge this small. We'll have to move upstream a bit. It will be dark before any of them settle under this ledge again. Is that so? Lorraine said. You two go ahead. I think I will just try here again. Perrin hesitated a moment before moving up the bank to another overhang. She was up to something, but he could not imagine what. That troubled him. Belly down and careful not to let his shadow fall on the water, he peered over the edge. Half a dozen slender shapes hung suspended in the water, barely moving a fin to hold their places. All of them together would not weigh as much as Moraine's fish, he decided with a sigh. If they were lucky, he and Loyal might take 2 apiece, but the shadows of trees in the far bank already stretched across the water. Whatever they caught now would be it. Loyal's appetite was big enough by itself to swallow those 4, and most of the bigger fish, too. Loyal's hands were already easing up behind one of the trout. Before Perrin could even slide his hands into the water, Moraine gave a shout. 3 should be enough, I think. The last 2 are bigger than the first. Perrin gave Loyal a startled look. She can't have. The Ogier straightened, sending the small trout scattering.
She is Aes Sedai,
he said simply. Sure enough, when they returned to Moraine, 3 big trout lay on the bank. She was already buttoning her sleeves up again. Perrin thought about reminding her that whoever took the fish was supposed to clean them too, but just at that moment she caught his eye. There was no particular expression on her smooth face, but her dark eyes did not waver. They appeared to know what he was going to say, and to have dismissed it out of hand already. When she turned away, it seemed somehow too late to say anything. Muttering to himself, Perrin pulled out his belt knife and set to gutting and heading. All of a sudden, she's forgotten about sharing the chores, it seems. I suppose she'll want us to do the cooking as well, and the cleaning up after.
No doubt she will,
Loyal said, without pausing over the fish he was working.
She is Aes Sedai.
I seem to remember hearing that somewhere. Perrin's knife ripped into the fish. The Shinarans might have been willing to run around fetching and carrying for her, but there are only 4 of us now. We should keep on turn and turn about. It's only fair. Belle gave a great snort of laughter.
I doubt she sees it that way. First, she had to put up with Bran arguing with her all the time, and now you're ready to take over for her. As a rule, Aes Sedai do not let anyone argue with them. I expect she means to have us back in the habit of doing what she says by the time we reach the first village.
A good habit to be in, Lan said, throwing back his cloak. In the fading light, he had appeared out of nowhere. Perrin nearly fell over from surprise, and Loyal's ears went stiff with shock. Neither of them had heard the warder's step. A habit you should never have lost, Lan added, then strode off toward Moraine and the horses. His boots barely made a sound, even on that rocky ground. Once he was a few paces away, the cloak hanging down his back gave him the uneasy appearance of a disembodied head and arms drifting up from the stream. Need her to find Bran, Perrin said softly, but I am not going to let her shape my life any more. He went back to his cleaning vigorously. He meant to keep that promise. He really did. But during the days that followed, in some way he did not quite understand. He found that he and Loyal were doing the cooking and the cleaning up, and any other little chore that Moraine thought of. He even discovered that somehow or other he had taken over tending Aldib every night, unsaddling the mare and rubbing her down while Moraine settled herself, apparently deep in thought. Loyal gave in to it as inevitable, but not Perrin. He tried resisting. But it was hard to resist when she made a reasonable suggestion, and a small one at that. Only there was always another suggestion behind it, as reasonable and small as the first, and then another. The simple force of her presence, the strength of her gaze, made it difficult to protest. Her dark eyes would catch his at the moment he opened his mouth. A lift of her eyebrow to suggest he was being rude, surprised widening of her eyes that he could object to so small a request, a level stare that held in it everything that was Aes Sedai. All these things could make him hesitate. And once he hesitated, there was never any recovering lost ground. Accused her of using the one power on him, though he did not really think that was it. And she told him not to be a fool. He began to feel like a piece of iron trying to stop a smith from hammering it into a scythe. The mountains of mist gave way abruptly to the forested foothills of Gillidan, land that seemed all up and down, but never very high. Deer, which in the mountains had often watched them warily, as if uncertain what a man was, began to bound away, white tails flickering at the first sight of the horses. Even Perrin now caught only the faintest glimpses of the gray-striped mountain cats that seemed to fade away like smoke. They were coming into the lands of men. Lan stopped wearing his color-shifting cloak and began riding back to the rest of them more often, telling them what lay ahead. In many places the trees had all been cut down. Soon fields encircled by rough stone walls and farmers plowing round the sides of hills were common sights, if not exactly frequent, along with lines of people moving across the plowed ground, sowing seed from sacks slung from their shoulders. Scattered farmhouses and barns of gray stone sat on hilltops and ridges. The wolves should not have been there. Wolves avoided places where men were, but Perrin could still sense them, an unseen screen and escort ringing the mounted party. Impatience filled him, impatience to reach a village or a town, any place where there were enough men to make the wolves go away. Day after sighting the first field, just as the sun touched the horizon behind them, they came to the village of Jara, not far north of the border with Amadisia. Curate. Jara. Three stone houses with slate roofs lay clustered along the few narrow streets of Jara, clinging to a hillside above a little stream spanned by a low wooden bridge. The muddy streets were empty, and so was the sloping village green, except for one man sweeping the steps of the village's only inn, standing beside its stone stable, but it looked as if there had been a good many people on the green not long before. Half a dozen arches woven of green branches and dotted with such few flowers as could be found this early in the year stood in a circle in the middle of the grass. The ground had a trampled look, and there were other signs of a gathering. A woman's red scarf lying tangled at the foot of one of the arches, a child's knitted cap, a pewter pitcher tumbled on its side, a few half-eaten scraps of food. The aromas of sweet wine and spiced cakes flung about the green, mixed in with smoke from dozens of chimneys, evening meals cooking. For an instant, Perrin's nose caught another odor, one he could not identify, a faint trail that raised the hair on the back of his neck with its vileness. Then it was gone. But he was sure something had passed that way, something wrong. He scrubbed at his nose as if to rub away the memory of it. It can't be Rand. Like, even if he has gone back, that can't be him, can it? Painted sign hung above the inn door, a man standing on one foot with his arms thrown in the air. Harlan's Leap. As they drew rein in front of the square stone building, the sweeper straightened, yawning fiercely. He gave a start at Perrin's eyes, but his own already protruding eyes went wide when they fell on Loial. With his wide mouth and no chin to speak of, he looked something like a frog. There was an old smell of sour wine about him, to Perrin at least. The fellow had certainly been part of the celebration. The man gave himself a shake and turned it into a bow with one hand resting on the double row of wooden buttons running down his coat. His eyes flickered from one to another of them, hopping even more every time they rested on Loial. Welcome, good mistress, and the light illumine your way. Welcome, good masters. You wish food, booze, baths? All to be had here at the Leap. Master Herod, the innkeeper, keeps a good house. I am called Simeon. If you wish anything, ask for Simeon. He will get it for you. He yawned again, covering his mouth in embarrassment and bowing to hide it. I beg your pardon, good mistress. You have come far? Have you word of the great hunt? The hunt for the Horn of Valir? Or the false dragon? It said there's a false dragon in Tarabon. Or maybe Arad Daman. We have not come that far, Lan said, swinging down from the saddle. No doubt you know more than I. They all began dismounting. "Had a wedding here?" Moraine said. "A wedding, good mistress? Why, we've had a lifetime of weddings, a plague of them, all in the last 2 days. There isn't a woman old enough to speak the betrothal remains unmarried, not in the whole village, not for a mile in any direction. Why, even widow Jorith dragged old Bonus through the arches, and they both sworn they'd never marry again. It was like a whirlwind, just snatched everybody up. Rilith, the weaver's daughter, she started it, asking John the blacksmith to marry her, and him old enough to be her father and more. The old fool just took off his apron and said yes, and she demanded the arches be put up right then and there. Wouldn't hear a proper wait, and all the other women sided with her. Since then, we've had marriages day and night. Why, nobody's had any sleep at all, hardly." "That's very interesting," Perrin said when Simeon paused to yawn again. "But have you seen a young—" "It is very interesting," Moraine said, cutting him off. "And I would like to hear more of it later, perhaps. For now, we would like rooms and a meal." Lan made a small gesture toward Perrin, down low, as if telling him to hold his tongue. "Oh, of course, good mistress. A meal, rooms." Simeon hesitated, eyeing Loyal. "We'll have to push 2 beds together for—" He leaned closer to Moraine and dropped his voice. "Pardon me, good mistress, but, what exactly is he? Meaning no disrespect," he added hastily. He had not spoken softly enough, for Loyal's ears twitched irritably.
"I am Ogier. What did you think I was, a Trolloc?"
Simeon took a step back at the booming voice. "Trolloc, good, master. Why, I'm a grown man. I don't believe in children's tales. Did you say Ogier? Why, Ogier that is—" In desperation, he turned to bellow toward the stable next to the inn. "Nico! Patrick! Visitors! Come see to their horses!" After a moment, 2 boys with hay in their hair had tumbled out of the stable, yawning and rubbing their eyes. He gestured to the steps, bowing as the boys gathered reins. Perrin swung his saddlebags and blanket roll over his shoulder and carried his bow as he followed Moraine and Lan inside, with Simeon bowing and bobbing ahead of him. Loyal had to duck low under the lintel, and the ceiling inside only cleared his head by a foot. He kept rumbling to himself about not understanding why so few humans remembered the Ogier. His voice was like distant thunder. Even Perrin, right in front of him, could only understand half of his words. The inn smelled of ale and wine, cheese and weariness, and the aroma of roasting mutton drifted from somewhere in the back. The few men in the common room sagged over their mugs as if they would really like to lie down on the benches and go to sleep. One plump serving woman was drawing a mug of ale from one of the barrels at the end of the room. The innkeeper himself, in a long white apron, sat on a tall stool in the corner, leaning against the wall. As the newcomers entered, he lifted his head, bleary-eyed. His jaw dropped at the sight of Loyal. "Visitors, Master Harrod," Simeon announced. "They want rooms." "Master Harrod?" "He's an Ogier, Master Harrod." The serving woman turned and saw Loyal and dropped the mug with a clatter. None of the weary men at the tables even looked up. One had put his head down on the table and was snoring. Loyal's ears twitched violently. Master Harrod got to his feet slowly, eyes fastened on Loyal, smoothing his apron all the while. "At least he is in a white cloak," he said at last, then gave a start as if surprised he had spoken aloud. "That is to say, welcome, good mistress, good masters. Forgive my lack of manners, I can only plead tiredness, good mistress." He darted another glance at Loyal and mouthed, "Ogier," with a look of disbelief. Loyal opened his mouth, but Moraine forestalled him. "As your man said, good innkeeper, I wish rooms for my party for the night and a meal." "Oh, of course, good mistress, of course. Simeon, show these good people to my best rooms, so they can put down their belongings. I'll have a fine meal laid out for you when you return, good mistress. A fine meal." "If it pleases you to follow me, good mistress," Simeon said. "Good masters." Bowed the way to stairs at one side of the common room. Behind them, one of the men at the tables suddenly exclaimed, "What in the name of the light is that?" Master Harrod began explaining about Ogier, making it sound as if he were quite familiar with them. Most of what Perrin heard before they left the voices behind was wrong. Loyal's ears twitched without stopping. On the second floor, the Ogier's head came near to brushing along the ceiling. The narrow corridor was growing dark, with only the sharp light of sunset through a window next to the door at the far end. "The candles in the rooms, good mistress," Simeon said. "I should have brought a lamp, but my head is still spinning from all those weddings. I'll send someone up to light the fire if you wish. And you'll want wash water, of course." He pushed open a door. "Our best room, good mistress. We don't have not many strangers, you see, but this is our best." "Take the one next to it," Lance said. He had Moraine's blanket roll and saddlebags on his shoulder, as well as his own, the bundle containing the dragon banner, too. "Oh, good master, that's not a very good room at all. Narrow bed, cramped, meant for a servant, I suspect, as if we'd ever have anybody here who had a servant. Begging your pardon, good mistress." "I will take it anyway," Lance said firmly. "Simeon," Moraine said, "does Master Herod dislike the Children of the Light?" "Well, he does, good mistress. He didn't, but he does. It isn't good policy disliking the children.
Hey, D-Man, how you doing, bro?
They come through Jara all the time, like there wasn't any border at all. But there was trouble yesterday. A fistful of trouble. And with the weddings going on and all...
Hope your fort's going good.
What happened, Simeon?" The man looked at her sharply before answering.
I tend to stay away from fireworks just because I've had bad experiences with them.
There was about 20 of them come the day before yesterday. No trouble then. But yesterday, why, 3 of them up and announced they weren't Children of the Light anymore. They took off their cloaks and just rode away. Lan grunted. "White cloaks swear for life. What did their commander do?" "Why, he must have done something, you can be sure, good master. But another of them announced he was off to find the Horn of Alir. Anyway, and still another said they would be hunting the dragon. That one said he was going to Almost Plain when he left. Then some of them started saying things to women in the streets. Things they shouldn't have. And grabbing at them. The women were screaming and children yelling at the ones bothering the women. I never saw such commotion." "Didn't any of you try to stop them?" Baron said. "Good master, you carry that axe like you know how to use it. But it isn't so easy to face up to men with swords and armor and all, when all you know how to use is a broom or a hoe. The rest of the White Cloaks, those that hadn't gone off, put an end to it. Almost came to drawing swords. And that wasn't the worst. 2 more just went mad, if the others weren't. Those 2 started raving that Jara was full of dark friends. They tried to burn the village down, said they would, beginning with the leap. You could see burn marks out back, where they got it started. Well,
Be right
White
back.
Cloaks when they tried to stop them. The White Cloaks that were left, they helped us put it out, tied those 2 up tight, and rode out of here. Back toward Medicea. We're breathing Tyson. And if they never come back, it'll be too soon." "Of behavior," Lance said, "even for White Cloaks." Simeon bobbed his head in agreement. "As you say, good master. They never acted like that before. Swagger around, yes. Look at you like you were dirt, and poke their noses in where they hadn't any business. But they never caused trouble before. Not like that, anyway." "They are gone now," Lance said, "and trouble's with them. I am sure we will pass a quiet night." Baron kept his mouth shut, but he was not quiet inside. "All these weddings and White Cloaks are all very well, but I'd sooner know if Rand stopped here, and which way he went when he left. That smell couldn't have been him." Let Simeon guide him on down the hall to another room, with 2 beds and a washstand, a pair of stools, and not much else. Loyal stooped to put his head through the doorway. Only a little light came in by the narrow windows. The beds were big enough, with blankets and comforters folded at the foot, but the mattresses looked lumpy. Simeon fumbled on the mantel of the fireplace until he found a candle and a tinderbox to get it alight. "I'll see about getting some beds put together for you, good Yes, just a moment now." He showed no sign of hurry to be about it, though, fussing with the candlestick as if he had to place it just right. Theron thought he looked uneasy. I'd be more than uneasy if White Cloaks had been acting like that in Emmons Field. "Simeon, Has another stranger passed through here in the last day or two? A young man, tall, with gray eyes and reddish hair. He might have played the flute for a meal or a bed. I remember him, good master, Simeon said, still shifting the candlestick. Came yesterday morning early. Looked hungry, he did. He played the flute for all the weddings yesterday. Good-looking fellow. Some of the women eyed him at first, but he paused, looking at Perrin sideways. Is he a friend of yours, good master? I know him, Perrin said. Why? Simeon hesitated. No reason, good master. He was an odd fellow, that's all. He talked to himself sometimes. Sometimes he laughed, and nobody had said anything. Slept in this very room last night, or part of it. Woke us all in the middle of the night yelling. It was just a nightmare, but he wouldn't stay any longer. Master Harrod didn't make much effort to talk him into it, after all that noise. Simeon paused again. He said something strange when he left. What? Perrin demanded. He said somebody was after him. He said. The chinless man swallowed and went on more slowly. Said they'd kill him if he didn't go. One of us has to die, and I mean it to be him. His very words.
Did not mean us, Lyle mumbled. We are his friends.
Of course, good Ogier. Of course he didn't mean you. I don't mean to say anything about a friend of yours, but I think he's sick. In the head, you know. We will take care of him, Perrin said. That's why we're following him. Which way did he go? I knew it, Simeon said, bouncing on his toes. I knew she could help as soon as I saw you. Which way? The east, good master. East, like the Dark One himself was on his heels. Do you think she'll help me? Help my brother, that is. Gnome's bad, sick. Mother Rune says she can't do anything. Perrin kept his face expressionless and bought a little time to think by propping his bow in the corner and setting his blanket roll and saddlebags on one of the beds. The problem was that thinking did not help much. He looked at Loyal, but found no help there. Consternation had the Ogier's ears drooping and his long eyebrows hanging down on his cheeks. What makes you think she can help your brother? Stupid question. The right question is, what does he mean to do about it? Why, I traveled to Johanna once, good master, and I saw two women like her. I couldn't mistake her after that. His voice dropped to a whisper. It said, they can raise the dead, good master. Who else knows this? Perrin asked sharply, and at the same time Loyal said,
If your brother is dead, there is nothing anyone can do.
Frog-faced man looked from one to the other of them anxiously, and his words came in a babble. No one knows but me, good master. Gnome isn't dead, good Ogier. We're only sick. I swear nobody else could recognize her. Even Master Harrod's never been more than 20 miles from here in his life. He's so bad sick. I'd ask her myself. Only my knees would be shaking so hard she couldn't hear me talk. What if she took offense and called down lightning on me? And what if I'd been wrong? It isn't the kind of thing you accuse a woman of without... He raised his hands, half in pleading, half as if to defend himself. Can make no promises, Perrin said, but I'll speak to her. Loyal, why don't you keep Simeon company till I've spoken to Moraine?
Of course,
the Ogier boomed. Simeon gave a start when Loyal's hand swallowed his shoulder.
He will show me my room and we will talk. Tell me, Simeon, what do you know of trees?
It's trees, good Ogier? Perrin did not wait any longer. He hurried back down the dark hall and knocked on Moraine's door, barely waiting for her peremptory come before pushing in. Half a dozen candles showed that the Leap's best room was none too good, though the one bed had 4 tall posts supporting the canopy, and the mattress looked less full of lumps than Perrin's. There was a scrap of carpet on the floor and 2 cushioned chairs instead of stools. Other than that, it looked no different from his room. Moraine and Lan stood in front of the cold hearth as if they had been discussing something, and the Aes Sedai did not look pleased at being interrupted. The warder's face was as imperturbable as a carving. Rand's been here all right, Baron started off. That fellow Simeon remembers him. Moraine hissed through her teeth. You were told to keep your mouth shut, Land growled. Baron squared his feet to face the water. That was easier than facing Moraine's glare. How could we find out whether he had been here without asking questions? Tell me that. He left last night, if you're interested, heading east, and he was carrying on about somebody following him, trying to kill him. East? Moraine nodded. The utter calm of her voice was at odds with her disapproving eyes. That is good to know, though it had to be so if he was going to tear. But I was fairly certain he had been here even before I heard about the White Cloaks, and they made it a certainty. Rand is almost surely right about one thing, Baron. I cannot believe we are the only ones trying to find him. And if they find out about us, they may well try to stop us. We're not to contend with trying to catch up to Rand without that. You must learn to hold your tongue until I tell you to speak. The White Cloaks? Baron said incredulously. Hold my tongue. Burn me if I will. How could they tell you Rand's madness? Is it catching? Not his madness, Moraine said. If he is far enough gone yet to be called mad. Baron, he is more strongly ta'veren than anyone since the Age of Legends. Yesterday in this village, the pattern shaped itself around him like clay shaped on a mold. The weddings, the White Cloaks, these were enough to say Rand had been here, for anyone who knew to listen. Baron drew a long breath. This is what we'll find everywhere he's been. Light, if there are shadows spawn after him, they can track him as easily as we can. Perhaps, Moraine said. Perhaps not. No one knows anything about ta'veren as strong as Rand. For just a moment, she sounded vexed at not knowing. Arthur Hawkwing was the most strongly ta'veren of whom any writings were made, and Hawkwing was in no way as strong as Rand. It is said, Land put in, that there were times when people in the same room with Hawkwing spoke truth when they meant to lie, made decisions when they had not even known they were contemplating. Times when every toss of the dice, every turn of the cards went his way. But only times. I mean, you don't know, Baron said. He could leave a trail of weddings and White Cloaks gone mad all the way to Tyr. I mean, I know as much as there is to know, Moraine said sharply. Her dark-eyed gaze chastised Baron like a whip. The pattern weaves finely around ta'veren, and others can follow the shape of those threads if they know where to look. Be careful your tongue does not unravel more than you can know. In spite of himself, Baron hunched his shoulders as if she were delivering real blows. Well, you had better be glad I opened my mouth this time. Simeon knows your Aes Sedai. He wants you to heal his brother known of some sickness. If I hadn't talked to him, he would never have worked up nerve enough to ask. But he might have started talking among his friends. I caught Moraine's eye. For a moment they stared at one another. The warder had the air about him of a wolf about to leap. Finally, Moraine shook her head. No, she said. As you wish. It is your decision. Lance sounded as if he thought she had made the wrong one, but the tension left him. Trent stared at them. You were thinking of... Simeon couldn't tell anyone if he were dead, could he? Will not die by my actions, Moraine said. But I cannot and will not promise that it will always be so. We must find Rand, and I will not fail in that. Is that spoken plainly enough for you? Caught in her gaze, Baron could make no answer. She nodded as if his silence were answer enough. Take me to Simeon. The door to Loyal's room stood open, spilling a pool of candlelight into the hall. The two beds inside had been pushed together, and Loyal and Simeon were seated on the edge of one. The chinless man was staring up at Loyal with his mouth open, and an expression of wonder in his face.
Oh, yes, the studying are wonderful,
Loyal was saying.
There is such peace there under the great trees. You humans may have your wars and strife, but nothing ever troubles the steady. We tend the trees and live in harmony.
He trailed off when he saw Moraine, with Lan and Baron behind her. Simeon scrambled to his feet, bowing and backing away until he came up against the far wall. Good mistress. Uh, Even then, he continued bobbing like a toy on a string. "Come me to your brother," Moraine commanded, "and I will do what I can. Perrin, you will come too, since this good man spoke to you first." Lan lifted an eyebrow, and she shook her head. "If we all go, we might attract attention. Perrin can give me what protection I need." Lan nodded reluctantly, then gave Perrin a hard look. "See that you do, blacksmith. If any harm befalls her." His cold blue eyes finished the promise. Simeon snatched one of the candles and scurried into the hallway, still bowing so the candlelight made their shadows dance. "This way, good mistress, this way." Beyond the door at the end of the hall, outside stairs led down to a cramped alleyway between inn and stable. Night shrank the candle to a flickering pinpoint. The half-moon was up in a star-flecked sky, giving more than enough light for Perrin's eyes. He wondered when Moraine would tell Simeon he did not have to keep bowing, but she never did. The Aes Sedai glided along, clutching her skirts to keep them out of the mud, as though the dark passage were a palace hall and she a queen. The air was already cooling. Nights still carried echoes of winter. "This way." Simeon led them back to a small shed behind the stable and hurriedly unbarred the door. "This way," Simeon pointed. "There, good mistress, there. My brother Gnome." The far end of the shed had been barred off with slats of wood, hastily by the rough look of it. A stout iron lock and a hasp held shut a crude door of wooden slats. Behind those bars, a man lay sprawled on his stomach on the straw-covered floor. He was barefoot, his shirt and breeches ripped as if he had torn at them without knowing how to take them off. There was an odor of unwashed flesh that Perrin thought even Simeon and Moraine must smell. Gnome lifted his head and stared at them silently, without expression. There was nothing at all about him to suggest he was Simeon's brother. He had a chin, for one thing, and he was a big man with heavy shoulders. But that was not what staggered Perrin. Gnome stared at them with burnished, golden eyes. "He'd been talking crazy almost a year, good mistress, saying he could talk with wolves. And his eyes." Simeon darted a glance at Perrin. "Oh, he talked about it when he drunk too much. Everybody laughed at him. But then a month or so ago, he didn't come to town. I went up to see what was the matter, and I found him like this." Cautiously, unwillingly, Perrin reached out toward Gnome as he would have toward a wolf. Running through the woods with the cold wind in his nose. Quick dash for cover, teeth snapping at hamstrings. Piece of blood, rich on the tongue. "Kill!" Perrin jerked back, as he would have from a fire. Sealed himself off. Were not thoughts at all, really. Just a chaotic jumble of desires and images, part memory, part yearning. But there was more wolf there than anything else. He put a hand to the wall to steady himself. His knees felt weak. "Help me." Moraine put a hand on the lock. "Master Herod has the key, good mistress. I don't know if he'll..." She gave a tug, and the lock sprang open. Simeon gaped at her. She lifted the lock free of the hasp, and the chinless man turned to Perrin. "Is that safe, good master? He's my brother, but he bit Mother Rune when she tried to help, and he killed a cow with his teeth." He finished faintly. "Frank," Perrin said, "the man is dangerous." "All men are dangerous," she replied in a cool voice. "Now be quiet." She opened the door and went in. Perrin held his breath. Her first step, Gnome's lips peeled back from his teeth, and he began to growl. A rumble that deepened till his whole body quivered. Moraine ignored it. Still growling, Gnome wriggled backwards in the straw as she came closer to him, until he had backed himself into a corner. Or she had backed him. Slowly, calmly, the Aes Sedai knelt and took his head between. Gnome's growl heightened to a snarl, then tailed off in a whimper before Perrin could move. For a long moment, Moraine held Gnome's head, then just as calmly released it and rose. Karen's throat tightened as she turned her back on Gnome and walked out of the cage, but the man only stared after her. She pushed the slided door to, slipped the lock back through the hasp, not bothering to snap it shut. The gnome hurled himself snarling against the wooden bars. He bit at them and battered them with his shoulders, trying to force his head between them, all the while snarling and snapping. Moraine brushed straw from her skirt with a steady hand and no expression. "You do take chances," Karen breathed. She looked at him, a steady, knowing gaze, and he dropped his eyes. His yellow eyes. Simeon was staring at his brother. "Help him, good mistress," he asked hoarsely. "I am sorry." "Can't you do anything, good mistress? Something? One of them's..." His voice fell to a whisper.
Hey, just chilling. How you doing?
Thing is not a simple matter, Simeon, and it comes from within as much as from the human. There is nothing here that remembers being known, nothing that remembers being a man. There are no maps remaining to show him the path back, nothing left to take that path. Gnome is gone, Simeon. He just used to talk funny, good mistress. When he'd had too much to drink, he just... Simeon scrubbed a hand across his eyes and blinked. "Thank you, good mistress. I know you'd have done something if you could." She put her hand on his shoulder, murmured comforting words, and then she was gone from the shed. Karen knew he should follow her, but the man, what had once been a man, he took a quick step and surprised himself by removing the dangling lock from the hasp. The lock was a good one, the work of a master smith. "Master?" Karen stared at the lock in his hand, with the man behind in the cage. Gnome had stopped biting at the slats. He stared back at Karen warily, panting. Some of his teeth had broken off jaggedly. "Can leave him in here forever," Karen said. "But I don't think he'll ever get any better." "If he gets out, good master, he'll die." "He will die in here or out there, Simeon. Out there, at least, he'll be free and as happy as he can be. He's not your brother anymore, but you're the one who has to decide. You can leave him in here for people to stare at, leave him to stare at the bars of his cage until he... You cannot cage a wolf, Simeon. Not and expect it to be happy. To live long." "Yes," Simeon said slowly. "Yes, I see." Hesitated, then nodded and jerked his head toward the shed door. That was all the answer Karen needed. He swung back the slided door and stood aside. For a moment, Gnome stared at the opening. Abruptly, he darted out of the cage, running on all fours, but with surprising agility. Out of the cage, out of the shed, and into the night. "My helpless both," Karen thought. "I suppose it's better for him to be free." Simeon gave himself a shake. "But I don't know what Master Herod will say when he finds that door standing open and Gnome gone." Karen shut the cage door. The big lock made a sharp click as he refastened it. Simeon barked a quick laugh, abruptly cut off. "He'll make something out of it. They all will. Some of them say Gnome turned into a wolf, fur and all, when he bit Mother Rune. It's not true, but they say it." Shivering, Karen leaned his head against the cage door. "He may not have heard, but he is a wolf. He is a wolf, not a man."
Not much, just, same old, same old.
Simeon said suddenly. "He was at Mother Rune's house, but she and I got Master Herod to move him here after the white folks came. They always have a list of names, dark friends they're looking for. It was Gnome's eyes, you see. One of the names the white folks had was a fellow named Perrin Ibarra, a blacksmith. They said he has yellow eyes and runs with wolves. You see why I didn't want them to know about Gnome." And turned his head enough to look at Simeon over his shoulder. "This Perrin Ibarra is a dark friend. A dark friend wouldn't care if my brother died in a cage. I suppose she found you soon after it happened, in time to help." Wish you'd come to Jara a few months ago. Fern was ashamed that he had ever compared the man to a frog. And I wish he could have done something for him. Darn me, I wish he could. Suddenly it burst on him that the whole village must know about his eyes. Simeon, would you bring me something to eat in my room? Master Herod and the rest might have been too taken with staring at Loyal to notice his eyes before, but they surely would if he ate in the common room. Of course, and in the morning too. You don't have to come down until you're ready to get on your horse. You are a good man, Simeon. A good man. Simeon looked all over again. Chapter 9. Wolf Dreams. Fern returned to his room by the back way, and after a time Simeon came up with a covered tray. The cloth did not hold in the smells of roasted mutton, sweet beans, turnips, and freshly baked bread, but Perrin lay on his bed staring at the whitewashed ceiling until the aromas grew cold. Images of Gnome ran through his head over and over again. Gnome chewing at the wooden slats. Gnome running off into the darkness. He tried to think of lock-making, with the careful quenching and shaping of the steel, but it did not work. Ignoring the tray, he rose and made his way down the hall to Moraine's room. She answered his rap on the door with, "Come in, Perrin." For an instant, all the old stories about Aes Sedai stirred again, but he pushed them aside and opened the door. Moraine was alone, for which she was grateful, sitting in a small leather-bound book. She corked the bottle and wiped the steel nib of her pen on a small scrap of parchment without looking at it. There was a fire in the fireplace. "I have been expecting you for some time," she said. "I have not spoken about this before because it was obvious you did not want me to. After tonight, though, what do you want to know?" "Is that what I can expect?" he asked. "To end like that?" Perhaps. He waited for more, but she only put pen and ink away in their small case of polished rosewood and blew on her writing to dry it. "That all? Moraine, don't give me slippery Aes Sedai answers. If you know something, tell me, please." "I know very little, Perrin. While searching for other answers among the books and manuscripts two friends keep for their researches, I found a copied fragment of a book. It spoke of situations like yours. That may be the only copy anywhere in the world, and it did not tell me much." "What did it tell you?" "Anything at all is more than I know. Pardon me, I've been worrying about Rand going mad, but I never thought I had to worry about myself." Right. Even in the age of legends, they knew little of this. Whoever wrote it seemed uncertain whether it was truth or legend, and I only saw a fragment. She said that some who talked to wolves lost themselves, that what was human was swallowed up by wolves. Some. Whether she meant 1 in 10 or 5 or 9, I do not know. I can shut them out. I don't know how I do it, but I can refuse to listen to them. I can refuse to hear them. Will that help? It may. Choose her words carefully. Mostly she wrote of dreams. Dreams can be dangerous for you, Perrin. You said that once before. What do you mean? According to her, wolves live partly in this world and partly in a world of dreams. "A world of dreams?" he said disbelievingly. Moraine gave him a sharp look. "That is what I said, and that is what she wrote. The way wolves talk to one another, the way they talk to you, is in some way connected to this world of dreams. Do not claim to understand how." She paused, frowning slightly. "From what I have read of the Aes Sedai who had the talent called dreaming, dreamers sometimes spoke of encountering wolves in their dreams, even wolves that acted as guides. I fear you must learn to be as careful sleeping as waking, if you intend to avoid wolves." "If that is what I decide, Moraine, I will not end up like Gnome. I won't." She eyed him quizzically, shaking her head slowly. "You speak as if you can make all your own choices, Perrin. You are Taviran, remember? He turned his back on her, staring at the night-dark windows, but she continued. Perhaps knowing what Rand is, knowing how strongly Taviran he is, I have paid too little attention to the other 2 Taviran I found with him. 3 Taviran in the same village, all born within weeks of one another. That is unheard of. Perhaps you, and Merritt, have larger purposes in the pattern than you or I thought. I do not want any purpose in the pattern, Perrin muttered. I surely can't have one if I forget I am a man. Will you help me, Moray? It's hard to say that. What if it means you're using the one power? Help me keep from losing myself. If I can keep you whole, I will. I promise you that, Perrin. But I will not endanger the struggle against the shadow. You must know that, too. He turned to look at her. She was regarding him unblinkingly. If your struggle means putting me in my grave tomorrow, will you do that, too? He was icily sure that she would. Have you not told me? Do not presume too far, Perrin, she said coldly. Do not press me further than I think proper. He hesitated before asking the next question. Can you do for me what you did for Lan? Can you shield my dreams? I already have a warder, Perrin. Her lips worked almost into a smile. And one is all I will have. You know what I mean. I don't want to be a warder. Light, bound to an Aes Sedai the rest of my life. That's as bad as the wolves. It would not aid you, Perrin. The shielding is for dreams from the outside. The danger in your dreams is within you. She opened the small book again. You should sleep, she said in dismissal. Be wary of your dreams, but you must sleep sometime. Turned a page, and he left. Back in his own room, he eased the hold he kept on himself, eased it just a trifle, let his senses spread. The wolves were out there still, beyond the edges of the village, bringing Jara. Almost immediately, he snapped back to rigid self-control. What I need is a city, he muttered. That would keep them at bay. After I find Rand. Finished with him. He was not sure how sorry he was that.
Alright, everyone. I'm gonna call it into his life for tonight. I want to thank Elle for stopping by. You know, who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.